Welcome back to another episode of the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast. Corey Jason, John Pauline, Ben Mandel here. Guys, it's finally happening. The A's have a home. It's not Oakland. It's not Sacramento. It's Vegas. They broke ground, shoveled to dirt on their new stadium. You guys excited? Baseball in Vegas? It hasn't been that way since the Mets and the Area 51s played there.
Is there any chance that this still doesn't happen all the way then?
I mean, that would be really, really funny.
I mean, that'd be hilarious, but I'm guessing like it's a done deal now.
Yeah, I mean, I think once you start digging the foundation. So like for this year in 2025, their, milestones, their goals are to have a concrete foundation and columns in place. Then in 2026, their goal that year is get some steel and get the frame completed. 2027, you'll have the seats, the locker room done. You'll build the field, get that done start to finish. And then you'll be ready for 2028 opening day.
Is it going to look like the concepts that they
Absolutely not. It never does. It never does. But do we think this even finishes on time? Or are we looking at a 2029, 2030 opening because it just takes forever?
Look, things are always delayed. I wouldn't be surprised if we see this as something where we don't even see the A's play a home game in Vegas until the 2030s. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
I mean, what do you guys think could happen to derail this and get them to not play in Las Vegas at this point?
I mean, the biggest thing would be money. That's I feel like the most obvious, and it's one of those things where projects like this are never under budget. They're always over. And it's going to be one of those things where something's going to go wrong. They're going to have a hiccup. And we have Xanadu Part 2. Corey, I know you're all familiar with what the American Dream Mall was supposed to be with how much you were at MetLife and
it took forever to build. But, now it's a nice looking mall that has...
I think it was a ski lodge that...
Yeah, indoor skiing.
It was supposed to be the biggest indoor ski mountain thing in the United States. Or in the world. But they kept running into problems, kept going over budget. I think 3 new companies and contractors took over the projects, and they still could never get it done. And finally, after 17 years, they decided we may as well do something with it and turned it into the biggest mall in the world.
That I've still never been to.
Me either. Seen the outside a lot.
But, moving past the A's and their, groundwork, let's talk a little bit more about the All-Star game. And that's coming up soon. Phase 1 of the voting ends in a couple days. I want to point out that there are 2 top vote getters right now. Aaron Judge for the American League side and Shohei Ohtani on the National League side. If they both remain the top vote getters, they will be locked into a starting spot for the All-Star game. Skip phase 2. They're starters. And that's that. But this is what the ballot looks like right now. The top 2 at each position, and then top 6 in the outfield, because those are what gets moved on to phase 2. So your top 2 first basemen in the American League are Vladdy and Paul Goldschmidt. The National League would be Freddie Freeman and Pete Alonso. Second base, Gleyber Torres and Jackson Holliday. Then Ketel Marte and Tommy Edman. Shortstop, you got Jacob Wilson and Bobby Witt Jr., followed by Francisco Lindor and Mookie Betts. Third base, Jose Ramirez and Alex Bregman. Third base, you got Manny Machado, and then it was... Forgot what I wrote down there. I'll find that in a second. But you got Manny Machado there, and then DH.
Come on, Corey.
It's smudges. I'm a lefty. It's smudges.
Why don't you just have the website up?
Or, I don't know, Google Doc.
Google Doc? Yeah,
we
well,
gotta get
pull
Corey a second monitor.
Yeah, definitely could use that. Let's see. MLB All-Star. So for DH, we got O'Hearn and then Rice for the American League side. The National League side, you got Ohtani and Devers. Now, Ben, you weren't here last week. How do you feel about Devers being eligible for the All-Star game on the National League side?
I mean, look, it is what it is. I don't think he should be penalized for it. And it's not like the National League doesn't have a DH. So, it is what it is. I think he's an all-star caliber player. And at the end of the day, Major League Baseball needs to get their star players into this game. So I have no problems with it whatsoever, especially if he gets voted in. The fans want it. That's what should trump everything.
If he doesn't get voted in, though?
If he doesn't get voted in, I mean, look.
Should he make it as a reserve?
If he's the best option, yes. You got to see who else gets voted in before determining who the best options are.
Third base for the National League, by the way, Manny Machado and Max Muncy. And then catchers, you got Cal Raleigh, Alejandro Kirk, and then National League, Will Smith and Carson Kelly. Now for the outfielders, American League, you got Aaron Judge, Riley Green, Javi Baez, Mike Trout, Stephen Kwan, Cody Bellinger. National League, you got PCA, Teoscar Hernandez, Kyle Tucker, Ronald Acuna Jr., Juan Soto, and Corbin Carroll. Like I said earlier, right, Judge and Ohtani are the top vote getters right now in the Major League voting. If Ohtani makes it, then he's the starting DH. There is no DH in phase 2 of voting. That's done. And then if Judge remains the top vote getter, only 4 outfielders move on and not 6 because you'll have one already locked in. So then it would be the top 4 vote getters, meaning Green, Baez, Trout, and Kwan would currently be the ones to move on. Judge, by the way, looking to be the first repeat for top vote getter since A-Rod in the 2007-2008 season. Judge and Ohtani were the top 2 vote getters last season as well.
Oof, that's all the way back when you had the mail in your all-star ballots.
It's been a while. Good almost 20 years. Crazy how that's almost 20 years ago. But Judge right now has 2,699,483 votes. Ohtani, 2,521,718 votes. Who do you guys think should be the top vote getter? Because that's one of the battles that I want to look at.
Aaron Judge. He's like the best player in baseball right now.
Not like he is the best player in baseball history, yes. Ben?
Look, I think that, Ohtani is the clear pick just because he's Ohtani. But at the end of the day, I think you look at a guy like Judge and everything that he's done, I think 100% he is the upper echelon of where you want to be. And I think, the Yankees added some pieces that have done some good things, but even last year, their lineup was not deep when they made it to the World Series. It was Aaron Judge. No one can will a lineup like Aaron Judge. And that's pretty much what he's been able to do this year. I think, Goldschmidt's resurgence, part of it has to do with hitting in a lineup with Aaron Judge. And, the only one who was not really able to get going with it right away was Cody Bellinger. And even he, has at least leveled up a bit.
So you think Judge should be the top vote getter over Ohtani this year?
100%.
All right, next battle I want to look at, the American League second base battle, but this is for the number 2 spot. So this is for somebody to go against Gleyber Torres. In phase 2 of the voting, you got Jackson Holliday with 806,133 votes and Jose Altuve with 795,123. Who do you guys think deserves it more between those two?
It's funny because Altuve, the left field experiment failed.
Spectacularly.
So I feel like that should, if you have that brutal of a position change attempt, like that should count against you. I'm gonna go with Holliday here.
I gotta agree with Ben on this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to Holliday too.
Plus,
But
I don't like Altuve. I really don't like Altuve.
I wonder why.
I who knows?
Who knows? Now you got the second spot for the American League DH. This is to go against Ryan O'Hearn. You got Ben Rice with 409,366 votes versus Brent Rooker, 396,290 votes. And then also versus Colt Keith, 363,723. So between Rice, Rooker, and Keith, where do you guys find yourself?
I'm all over Rooker. I think, for the A's, it would be good for the franchise to have an all-star named as a starter. I'd want to keep that going. Plus, look, Rooker is one of those guys who just flies under the radar because of where he plays.
Yeah, I mean, I lean Ben Rice, but that's a little bit of home cooking for me. I've just seen what he's done and how unlucky he's gotten. And I just look at him and see, that's just a professional hitter. He's going to be competitive every at bat. And I think the numbers might come around by the All Star game and be a lot more respectable with the way he's been hitting.
I also like Brent Rooker there. I just think he's one of the better players on the A's right now, and I like Ben. If he wasn't on the A's, we'd probably be here like way more about him. He's one of those players that does seem to go under the radar because of the team he's on. But if he was on like almost any other team, you would probably hear way more about him.
Now, the fourth spot for the American League outfielder, like we said, Judge is probably going to be locked into that starting lineup. So instead of 6 players moving on, only 4 will. And that's going to be between Stephen Kwan, 810,746 votes, Cody Bellinger, 712,153, and Kerry Carpenter, 664,318 votes. Personally, as much as I want to lean Bellinger, I think Stephen Kwan's probably got the edge, but I would be very thrilled with either two of those guys. I think they're both just a step above Kerry Carpenter in this.
I like Kerry Carpenter's power, but he's a little bit too streaky. I think Kwan is easily the most consistent player of these 3.
Bellinger hasn't been an all-star since 2019 in his MVP year with the Dodgers. I was a little surprised to find that out.
I like Kwan too, but I mean he doesn't have the same power as all the other guys do, but he is a way more consistent and just better hitter.
Right.
But there's no power really behind him. So, I mean, what's he sitting at right now? 6 home runs?
And I believe he hit 3 of them in a week. He went on a little bit of a power surge.
Yeah. So, but he's batting 310. So he's batting over 300. He just doesn't have the power and stuff. If he had the power, it would be he would definitely be probably, I don't think he'd be first, but he'd probably be second or third in voting.
Now going to the National League side of things for a little bit, you have the 5th and 6th outfielder because Ohtani's not an outfielder, he's a DH. 6 guys move on. You're looking at Juan Soto with 1,048,781 votes. Corbin Carroll, 1,019,472. And Andy Pajes, 962,219. Personally, I think Pajes and Carroll are the clear 2 that should be moving on to the next round out of these 3. They've been consistent pretty much all year. And Carroll went on a very surprising power stretch too, where he's shown that he could be a 5-tool player.
Look, I think, it's very easy to look at Juan Soto's first 2 months and turn your nose to it, but Juan Soto's had a terrific June, and even during this Mets losing streak, he's been the only guy hitting, it feels like. I think, with his recent power surge, I think they said he's hit 9 of his home runs in June so far. He's got himself up to 17 now on the year, which means he's going to get to 30. I'm happy with where Juan Soto is at. I think his recent surge is actually going to be what propels him to the top of this because you're going to get more recency bias. But when you look at these guys overall, is Pages really a better option than both Carroll and Soto? No, I believe Carroll just went on the injured list, if I'm not mistaken, with a fractured wrist. But I think, so that might pull him out
He
to
did. He has
begin
a
with.
chip in the wrist.
What was that, Corey?
He has a chip in his wrist. I don't think
Okay.
they gave a timeline yet on
That's
Yeah,
when
there's
probably-
no
it's probably
timeline,
done.
and I know there was questions about whether or not he was going on the injured list, but I think I saw that yesterday. So I'm not exactly sure where he currently stands, but I know he's dealing with some injuries now. But Juan Soto is the one who's trending up. And I think that's why Juan Soto is the one who gets the edge of the three. Now, I mean, Pages, though, on the other hand, yes, he's been one of the guys carrying that Dodger offense, surprisingly.
Yeah.
I gotta agree with Ben on this one, though, as much as I don't want to. I mean, Soto, he didn't start off great, but he has had a fantastic June and then, has started to look like how he did in the past. And if you look at like his numbers, he's pretty close to, Pages and Carroll. So it's like, and if you had to pick one out of those three, like Soto, easy is
I
like
mean,
the best one
I
out of the
still
three.
lean Pages to me, my top out of those three, just because he's, carrying a Dodgers team. And honestly, I think he's just been a more consistent player over the stretch of the season. Not that he's not a better player. Obviously, Soto's the better player to the three, but consistency, I think you got to reward that, especially when the numbers are very similar. Then the last battle I want to bring up is for the second, third base spot in the American League. Alex Bregman, 654,377 votes versus Zach McKinstry, 502,516 votes. We've named a lot of Tigers today. That's what you get when you got the best team in baseball. Do we lean Bregman, who's hurt, or McKinstry right now?
I mean, Bregman, I think there's just a lot of weirdness around there because you feel like, is he really a gain to his team because it cost you Rafael Devers at the end? You know, but I feel like just overall people get infatuated with names. I think McKinstry is the better option.
I agree with you, Ben. And I think it's a big reason why it's good that we don't go straight fan vote for the full team anymore, because people just go for the names and you kind of get, remember that one year where basically every starter was a Blue Jay? You get that when you get a lot of undeserving players, or less deserving players, I should say, in these roles. But John, who do you like between the two?
I mean, honestly, Bregman, because it's like, I mean, it's not like Bregman's having a bad year. I mean, he's batting 299, 11 home runs, 35 RBIs, 938 OPS. I mean, and McKinstry, like, he has 4 home runs, 21 RBIs, 774 OPS. He's batting almost like 270. I mean, I guess you can see, I guess I can get behind McKinstry, but it's like Bregman is having a really good year too.
I just think the
So,
injuries have kind of played a factor in that.
yeah, but if he's healthy, I mean, I'm taking Bregman all day.
Understood. Now, John, I want to kind of lead it off with the only positive team that we got represented here. Phillies 4-2 since our last episode. They're 47-31 overall. They went 2-1 versus Miami, 2-1 versus the Mets, 8-2 in their last 10. They're a game and a half up on the Mets now. How's it going in Philly land?
Pretty good considering everything. I mean, you have Harper pretty much out with no timetable for return. You have Nola on the 60-day IL. I mean, with really no timetable to return. So, I mean, and then if you're going back a few weeks, I mean, you don't have Alvarado either. So, and they're still hanging on, playing good ball, and they're back in first place. So, it's almost like they're doing better without Harper. Now, that's not saying that Harper was bringing them down. It just happens that they are doing good again, because I think the whole team was in kind of a slump, and now they're all coming out of it. So they're all doing good. I mean, you have Abel, who was pitching good. I think he got rocked a little bit the other day. Gave up like 4 home runs. Yeah. I know I saw something that said that maybe he was like tipping pitches or something, but he just said the Mets are just really good at hitting the heaters, and that's what he throws a lot. So
yeah, the Mets only win in their last.
The only win.
It's going to be 12 games.
Yeah, I mean the Mets 1-6 since the last episode, 46-33 overall. Went 0-3 versus Atlanta, 1-2 versus Philly, and then another 0-1. Then you're saying another loss on its way versus Atlanta.
Yeah, currently down 7-3 in the 8th.
Oh, that's fantastic.
1-9 in their last 10. They're 1.5 back on Philly, and they're 3 up on San Fran in that first wild card. No, it's early to talk about wild card, but it's worth noting. Ben, Soto's playing well. The team isn't.
No.
What's up with that?
It is not. Look, it's overall, you've got Lindor and Alonso have cooled a bit. You have the starting pitching is not giving you any length and depth. And they actually brought up a pretty good point during Monday's broadcast. And they had asked Carlos Mendoza what was most alarming to him during this stretch. And it wasn't about the way that they're playing. It was about the way they have had to use the bullpen. Their team ERA has jumped over 3. Coming into today's game, I believe it was a 3.2. So that's, still pretty good, but it is climbing. The pitching is not what it was in the first 2 months of the year. They're walking a lot more batters. They've had some injuries. They've had some guys slow down. Frankie Montas came back and gave 5 scoreless innings. The only Met in the last 10 games to go more than 5 innings. So, and still, like, your bullpen is still being taxed. It is definitely not good for the long run, but the way that they're playing, that they're all going to come out of it. It's going to be snap. It's a shame that this stretch comes when you're playing Atlanta and Philly. It really does. But even if you lose all of the games to Atlanta, you still have a 7-game lead on them. It's not the end of the world. And like I always say, it's never as bad as it seems. It's never as good as it seems. The Mets are not this bad. They will eventually come out of this one.
I mean, if I told you on March 15th that on today's date, the Mets would be, 46-33, would you not have signed up for it?
Not precisely, but it's again, like I said, you're not concerned about the way that they're playing so much as you're concerned about the taxation of your pitching staff that you've had to do.
Their starters
not to mention the fact,
can't go deep in the games right now.
Also to throw out there, reinforcements on the way, but still, Sean Manaea shut down for 3 days. They do still expect him to make his next rehab start next week, but loose bodies in the elbow. He got a cortisone shot today, shut down for 3 days. Typically that can be nothing, but as someone, who already had the lat strain, to learn a new ailment is not great. If this is something that Carlos Carrasco had, pitched through it, and then never really looked the same until he had that procedure. That's when he ended up having his last decent season before really kind of tapering off and becoming just a depth piece. So it could be something that leads to major issues. It could be nothing, but more Manaea news there.
How's Clay Holmes been?
Look, overall, he's been solid. Clay Holmes
But recently, though, since he's
everything.
basically hit, his season's innings limit.
Look, the Mets have also talked about going to more of that 6-man rotation once they get the arms and stuff available. You understand that, hey, Clay Holmes might not be able to go super deep into games. It's not like he's getting frontline starter money. If he can give me 4 or 5 innings come October, that's really all you need once you get to, those stretches where you really just need innings to be eaten up.
Right. Now, what about Vientos and Alvarez being sent down?
Well, Vientos is rehabbing.
Okay.
So it's a rehab starts for Vientos. I like the move for Alvarez because at this point Terens is your starter.
You're
He's your
welcome.
starting catcher. You want Alvarez to get more regular reps, and he can go down there and work on things. It has been proven, with some of these guys in their system, that just going down to the minors sometimes can help you. You look at a Tyler McGill, a David Peterson, Brett Beatty. These are guys who have come through and have, been able to contribute this season. And it's due to the progress that they've made coming up through the system.
It's just interesting because, at least with Alvarez, there's stuff coming out about why he is the way he is and how the team has kind of spoken to him. I don't know if you saw any of those quotes, Ben.
I'm not sure exactly which ones you're talking about here, so I'd need more specifics.
Let me pull it up. There was quotes about, that really hurt his development because it really made him question. Trying to find exactly what it was. I saw it the other day where it talked about.
I'm pretty sure this is something from a while ago.
No, it was said to him a while ago, but it's
Yeah.
resurfaced in the last few days, and it makes a lot of sense. I'm trying to find the exact quote.
No,
But
I
you can see
actually feel
since he
like I
was
remember him talking with Eduardo Perez during like a Sunday night baseball broadcast about it. And how this new management regime has fit him a lot better.
let me see if I can find that exact quote. I saw it in passing the other day. I meant to send it to you guys. But I just think it's hard to bounce back. He's only 23. He's still young. It's just one of those things where you don't want to wreck his confidence.
Yeah, but you also can't wreck a season. And if your best option is to go with Terens and then explore for an external option to platoon with him, then that's what you have to do. You can't sacrifice the season because of that. Now, you could also move Alvarez in a trade if that's how you feel. If you feel like he's not the guy, he's shown light tower power. I'm sure a rebuilding team would be very interested in acquiring his services, especially because he has team control for 5 more years, I believe, at the very least 4. But, this is a guy who I think the Mets still understand is a project. He's 23. He's young. The hope was, yeah, he come up here and just start dropping bombs, but, it's not always going to happen.
I can't find the exact quote, but it had to do with, you think you hit well when you hit however many home runs he did. Was it 20 home runs his rookie year? Something like that.
Yeah.
It was you think that you had a good season, well, you didn't. You had all these issues. You didn't play well behind the plate. You weren't good defensively. You didn't have a good year just because you hit all these home runs.
It's not. Yeah, and
Something to
look.
that effect.
Okay, but that's also not false. Like, catcher is
No,
a
but
defensive position. It
he
is a
obviously
very
messed with his
important
head.
position. Well, it's a very important position, and I get, like, there's a better way to go about it, but also, like, you have to be realistic with yourself. Look
Of
yourself in the
course.
mirror and say, look, you can go out and hit 20 home runs, but if you go out and cost your team 30 runs behind the plate, are you really adding to the team? those 20 home runs don't mean anything if you're just giving them up behind the plate.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's what you're doing. That is a position where you cannot stick someone there. That's why teams often will go with someone who is a detriment with the bat because of how important a position it is defensively.
Yeah, it really is just a cyclical way of looking at the catcher position where you always had the light hitting defensive catchers. And then it went, towards, oh, we need to get offense from there. We don't really care so much about the defense. To now you're trying to go back to the defensive where you have the catchers on the one knee because that helps pop time. And they'll sacrifice a couple pass balls to get a quicker pop time and save the
Well, and
knees
it's also for pitch framing as well. Pitch framing is
right. It
big
helps
with
your
it.
pitch framing. So, it's a give and take here and a give and take there. Now, the Yankees, who have been just as bad as the Mets over the last stretch, they're 3-4 since the last episode. They're 45-33 overall. They went 1-2 versus the Angels, 2-1 versus Baltimore, 0-1 versus Cincinnati, and they're currently in extras tied against Cincinnati. Judge popped out with the bases loaded in the top of the 10th. 2 outs. Very disappointing from the captain. Yankees are 3-7 in their last 10. They're 2 up on Tampa for the division. It's been rough when your offense just stops working. The pitching has been phenomenal. They've been just like the Mets, but they've been going deeper, and that's been the main difference between the two teams, where the Yankees aren't taking out their starters after 3 1/3 or 4 1/3. Everybody's been pretty decently going 5-6 innings, even longer, but they're giving away games late. They're having a lot of bad luck. It's tough, and it's just right now not a fun stretch. And for a while, it was always the Mets were the team that always had a June swoon, right, Ben? Like the June and the Mets never got along for years.
Mm-hmm.
And now this is like the second or third year in a row where the Yankees have run into that summer buzzsaw too. And I get it. I really get it. How you see a team playing so well the first 2 months just run into a wall and forget how to play. They've been one of the worst offensive teams in the league over the last few weeks. They rank among the worst in every offensive stat outside of like home runs. They got shut out 3 games in a row last week. So it's very, very rough, but you see guys starting to click, starting to put it together. And, they just need to really work on their bullpen, maybe get another bat. But you can see the light at the end of that tunnel.
Corey, can I just point out this is why the 2020 60-game season is not a legitimate season?
It absolutely is not, because you don't get that wear and tear. You don't have to deal with a lot of those issues. Now, let's get into our studs and duds. The guy I really want to discuss is Diamondback starting pitcher Eduardo Rodriguez. In his 2 games started, he went 1-1, but he only gave up 1 earned run, 2 runs total. He's got a .84 ERA in his 10 2/3 of an innings pitched, 11 hits, which is a lot, 5 walks, but 14 strikeouts. Hitters were hitting .268 against him. Pretty good week from a guy on a team that really could use it. My dud, Pirates outfielder O'Neal Cruz. In his 5 games, 23 at-bats, 2 hits, 1 RBI, walked once, struck out 10 times. He's hitting .087 with a .207 OPS. That's putrid.
Yeah,
What do you guys got?
Yeah, for me, my stud. Actually, I'm going to start off by going with my dud because I want to highlight Pete Alonso. Brutal week for him, just 4 hits. He was able to add 2 walks, but the polar bear needs to do better. Part of why this Mets team is struggling so much, just a 174 average of 544 OPS. Yes, there were guys who had worse weeks than him, but his expectation is a lot higher. You no longer have an argument for who should start at first base in that All-Star game. Hands down to me is Freddie Freeman. Now, my stud, it's the big dumper, Cal Raleigh. He continues to mash 5 more home runs over the last week, a 429 average, a 1690 OPS. He just doesn't stop. I believe he's at 32 now, including 4 straight games with home runs. The guy is gunning for the record. I believe he's on pace for, I believe they said 66 home runs, which would almost be poetic if he was able to smash Aaron Judge's record. And then I think at that point he also has to take the MVP away from Judge as well. If you are able to hit 66 home runs in a season. I think the thing I'm most interested in is to see if Judge can keep up with him so much as Cal Raleigh keeping up with Judge.
Yeah, I still think he got that backwards. It's over a long haul. I'll take the guy who's done it before.
Live on the edge, Corey.
Let me see that Cal Raleigh MVP slip.
My stud this week is Byron Buxton. He is 9 for 27, 6 home runs, only for 6 RBIs though. He's batting over 340, 1 stolen base. I think I didn't write down his OPS, but I'm assuming it. I'm terrible today.
It's all right. Judge just scored.
Yeah, I'm like
a pass ball, so Yankees are up now 4-3.
Yeah. Yeah, OBP over 400 as well. That's what I thought. So, Byron Buxton making a push here. That's, why he should be an all-star this year. So, and then my dud is Josh Jung. Only 2 hits, 3 RBIs, batting just barely 150 with an OBP of barely 150 also. So just absolutely terrible for the Rangers.
Yeah, that's pretty rough. All right. Now, let's talk a little trade. Right? Trade deadline coming up a little over a month away. I got 5 names. I'm going to tell you who they are, who they play for, what position they play, and also what their contract looks like. Tell me if you think they're going to get traded, and without naming your favorite team, tell me one team you think could benefit the most from them. All right? You guys ready?
Let's do it.
Sure.
Let's start off with Diamondbacks third baseman Eugenio Suarez, who's in a contract year. Does he get moved, and where does he go?
This one's a tough one just because everyone could use a power bat, right? And I don't know. I just feel like the Diamondbacks are not going to sell off at this point. I'm just going to go with that. I don't think that, Suarez gets moved because I think the Diamondbacks still feel like they have a shot and like they can hit their way into the postseason. But, if anyone is knocking on the door there, I could see maybe a Toronto looking to add an additional bat here.
John, do you think he gets moved?
Honestly, with the Diamondbacks being like 2.5 games out of the wild card, I know it's kind of early, like you said, but I mean, being that close, and just for how good he has been, it's like 50-50. But I feel like they think they can make the playoffs, and there's a really good chance they could. So there's a good chance they just roll with what they have. But it being like a contract year, I mean, I don't know. Like I don't know. I'm gonna say they just hold on with and roll with it because I think they probably think that they can make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair enough. They're all right there. I think he does get traded. And if I'm not picking the Yankees, I'm going to pick a team. I think Ben had the right idea with like Toronto, a team like that could use a power bat. Trying to think of another option, maybe somebody, I don't know, like the Mets if they kind of want to move off Beatty. I think that'd be a pretty solid fit to really lengthen their lineup. But the second name I want to bring up is Angels outfielder Taylor Ward, who's got the rest of this year and all of next year left on his deal.
Yeah, look, I think that with Taylor Ward, this is a name that, the Angels are just going to try to get whatever they can for him. I just don't know how big the market is going to be. I don't know if the Angels are going to get the return they'd expect. I'm really curious to see what the outfield market comes to be at this point. But like I said, everybody wants to add a bat. I wouldn't be surprised if this actually is Crosstown and the Dodgers are the team that's knocking on the door and pays the best price for the Angels outfielder.
Honestly, I'm thinking maybe, similar, like close, like not too far from the Dodgers. They're the Giants. Kind of going. I think maybe they just make another big push and just go all in.
I'm thinking in division. I do think he gets moved. I think Seattle is an interesting option. They can use all the help they can get. And maybe a change of scenery brings back a little bit of that magic that Ward has had in the past. The next name is Cardinals starting pitcher Eric Fetty. He's in a contract year.
Yeah, Fetty is a interesting name. He's someone who the Mets saw plenty with Washington. In not the most consistent arm. I think the Cardinals end up hanging on to him just because you're not going to get a pretty good price tag for him. I don't think, or at least in my opinion, the Cardinals don't strike me as, a team that's completely ready to throw it in and get rid of all their assets. But, I'm just not sure who is going to be barking up that tree that's outside the division, because I don't see the Cardinals making a deal with the Cubs, and I think that's the team that would want Fetty the most.
I think he does get moved, and I think he gets moved to Boston.
Boston buying.
I think Boston will buy. I think that they're going to be one of the most confusing teams of the deadline. And I think Boston knows they need more starting pitching depth. I think they'll take on Fetty, and it won't cost them really anything at all. The next name I want to bring up is Kansas City starting pitcher Seth Lugo. Now, he's got a player option after this year for 2026 at $15 million that he's most likely going to decline. Do they move him, or do they keep him?
He gets moved. I think that Kansas City is a team that realizes the Tigers are running away with this division, and they're not really there to compete just yet. I think maybe they try to re-sign him in the offseason, but Kansas City's going to move Seth Lugo, and Toronto. I think that would love to get a guy like Seth Lugo, especially with the potential for him to at least maybe be there for next year as well. That we talked about it 2 weeks ago. The best way for Toronto to get guys there long term is to trade for them and try to convince them to sign.
Yeah, to me, he's got Dodger written all over him. They need the pitching, and they've never been shy of having too much.
I was going to say, it's just at what point? Like, how do they turn through so many pitchers?
Because they don't care about their players or their health.
They're just like, we can just trade for another one. That's their mentality.
What do you think, John? Do they keep him or do they move him?
Honestly, they probably just trade him away, because I feel like you can get a pretty decent haul from trading him compared to, some other pitchers, because he's a pretty decent pitcher. So it's like, I mean, now to who? I mean, you can say a ton of names. I mean, like, who's not looking for another pitcher?
Everybody's looking for pitching.
Like, everyone would love to have another arm.
Quality arms are hard to come by.
So it's like, I mean, you got you can look like, like Cubs, Mets, Red Sox, like
Phillies.
Phillies. Even though I'm not allowed to say it, but Ben said it first.
I was able. I threw him out there for you.
I didn't say it. I didn't say it. Ben said it. But I mean, you have almost everything. It's just a matter of like which team can give the Royals the best offer.
So my last name I want to bring up, Minnesota right-hand relief pitcher Yohan Duran. He's got 2.5 years left. Minnesota isn't playing well. They're in fourth place in their division. They would be selling at the height of his value because we know how fickle relief pitchers are. We saw Class A last year to this year and how he's played a lot worse. You can lose it right away, so you might as well sell if you're not, needing him to compete. Do we think they move him at the deadline or even in the offseason? I'm going to extend it to.
I think they move him at the deadline. I think the Twins just have to accept their fate at this point and get as much as they can for him. Now, everyone will be calling on this one. I think that the Phillies are the team that will give up an arm and a leg for him if they have to, because I think the Phillies do realize that, yes, even though their farm system isn't putrid, their window is now. They don't have too much terrific help coming up through the pipeline. They have some guys, it's not world beaters. It's not like, hey, we have 6 guys like the Orioles did. So their window is now. The time is now. I think, you do what you can. And Dombrowski has not been shy about going to get relief arms because he knows the bullpen is the one thing he has never been able to figure out.
Yeah, I think obviously the Phillies are the top team. It's really any team that needs bullpen. I think the Mets might really look to check in on him.
The Mets would love a bridge with how Garrett struggled. They would love a bridge to Diaz.
And it could take pressure off of Diaz too. You don't need him to close every game. You can put him in, the 8th. You can really have a closer by committee with the two of them. Now, I know Diaz is your closer, but he has had his bouts of struggle every now and again. So just to have 2 elite arms, it would be really good for them. Obviously, a team like the Padres, the Giants.
You can get him for free if you eat Correa's contract.
See, forward thinking like that. Now, I want to highlight a series because the AL East is a lot closer than I wish it was. Toronto, they're in third place. They're 3 games back. Next week, they're playing a set against the Yankees in Toronto. The Yankees have been struggling. This is prime opportunity for the Blue Jays to strike and take down the Yankees and knock them out of first place, maybe even claim it for themselves. So Yankees at Toronto, at least in my opinion, is a massive series next week.
Yeah, for me, I am highlighting the Giants Diamondback series. This is a big one. The Giants know they need all the games that they can get when it comes to the Dodgers. And the Diamondbacks, this is a team that's trying to fight to prove to the organization that they are still in contention despite all of the injuries that they've continued to experience.
My weekly highlight this week is going to be the Padres at the Phillies. I mean, the Padres are half a game back in the wild card. They are, I think, 5.5 out of first, and the Phillies have a 1.5 lead. So, I mean, this can be an important series later on in the season, depending on what the Padres do and where the Phillies end up. So, absolutely, Phillies have to win this series, and honestly, 2 good teams going up, so it should be a bunch of good games to watch.
All right, well, that'll do it for us here. We'll be back at it next week. We'll be talking a little phase 2 of the All-Star balloting, getting into July. We'll have a better idea of what's going on. Again, Home Run Derby talk, that's going to be happening pretty soon. But that's going to do it here for us. Corey, Jason, John Pauline, Ben Mandel, signing off for the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast.